Hey, welcome to Cheaper TV. On this week's episode, we're going to look at the off-roading mods, the overlanding mods, and some DIY mods on this Jeep. So stick around.
Installed an OR fab front light Terraflex transit
Hi, welcome to Cheaper TV. I'm Dino, your host. Glad to see you here. On this week's episode, I'm going to introduce to you Fred, who you may recognize from our local Jeep Club Show and Shine video, where I showed briefly some of the attributes of the Jeep that's behind us. Well, we're going to get an up-close and personal look at this Jeep. We're going to have a look at the off-road mods, the overlanding mods, and some DIY mods, all of which you may want to do on your Jeep as well. So let's have a closer look.
Hi, I'm Fred from the Tri-City Jeep Club. I'm here to give you a quick tour of my Jeep. To get started in off-roading, pretty much any Jeep owner installs a lift kit. I began with an AEV 2.5-inch lift. I now have a 4.5-inch high-capacity suspension lift from AEV. Next up is tires and rims. I began with 33-inch tires, but I currently have 35-inch BFG Goodrich KM3 tires mounted on AEV Bora rims. Another must-have for off-roading is a quick disconnect system. I have the JKS Flex Connect. As I matured in off-roading, I discovered other weak links or vulnerable parts, and I went off and improved my front axle by installing a heavy-duty diff cover, a truss, and skid plates for the control arms, and a heavy-duty tie rod and drag light. I also added armor front and rear with bumpers. I've installed an OR fab front bumper. In the front bumper, I have installed a Smitty built 12,500 pound synthetic winch. I've got a custom license plate mount so I can just easily remove my license plate to get access to the winch. I've got a ham radio for communications and a CB radio as well. Jeep headlights are notoriously poor. Best recommended investment is LED headlights and fog lights. After getting stuck in deep water, I installed a snorkel. Worthwhile invention. As part of that, and to avoid cutting into my hood, I actually replaced my hood as well with an AEV heat reduction cooling hood. I've also added additional lighting, LED lighting, for lighting up the trail on those late nights. Moving to the side and rear of the vehicle, I have more armor. Poison Spider rock rails. Some do-it-yourself mud flaps, and I'll explain why about that in a little while. Protection for my hinges. At the rear of the vehicle, safety is first. I've installed an AEV rear view camera on my spare tire so that I can see behind this massive tire. More LEDs. A Poison Spider rear bumper with a nice hook in the hitch for quick recoveries. I've inserted LED backup lights into these recesses. And I've relocated my trailer hitch connector, which of course I almost never use, because I completely bashed it off once. Terraflex Transit mud flaps. These are really handy because they remove with the twist of a knob for off-road so they don't get in the way or damaged, but then you're legal on-road. More underneath stuff. I've got a AEV skid plate for the rear differential, ARB diff covers here, and I should also mention I've re-geared my Jeep to 410s from the stock ratio and added lockers from ARB. And you might notice something missing under here. My muffler has been tucked up and shrunk with an aftermarket one because it was so huge and bulky that it just got in the way. I've banged it up a few times. Now there's a couple more details under the hood that we're going to take a look at to wrap up the off-roading modifications. First, to power the lockers, we've got an air compressor. This also serves to help fill up tires after the trail. Here we have a Genesis dual battery kit. This provides power to all my off-roading goodies and my overlanding stuff. There's also lights under the hood for those "oops, I need to fix it at night" repairs. These lights are really convenient because they're magnetic. I can relocate them as I need it. Now that we've taken a look on the outside of the Jeep, let's take a look on the inside and see all of the stuff that makes life so much nicer to drive. First, let's protect your floor. As you can see, these mats, I believe they're Husky, take a beating and just keep on going. Next, I have a Switch Pro's switch panel. This is mounted under the hood to distribute the power, but all the controls are nicely positioned right here. Up here, I have a Vector Off-Road's e-dock with an assortment of RAM mounts for all my various devices. My phone, camera controls, a tablet for navigation. Up here, I have an electronic or digital rear view mirror, which allows me to see out the back window, even despite the tire and fuel tank blocking my view. Here we have a Molly Platform's overhead rack. It holds my CB radio and ham radio. If it's your preference for higher security storage, I've got a Tuffy Enclosures glove box, center console, and under seat drawer. We did a trip down to Virginia to Blue Ridge Overland, and I was able to equip myself with a whole bunch of gear, including this organizer with various different pouches, even more pouches, a garbage bag, a mount for my first aid kit on my headrest, plus this storage attic that I've modified for use with my hardtop. Now that we've covered most of the off-roading mods that I've covered over the years, let's turn our attention to some more of the overlanding inspired modifications that I've done. First and foremost, overlanding can take you far off the beaten track. So I've installed a Titan XL fuel tank behind my spare tire. To carry all of this weight, clearly the stock hinges don't do the trick. So I've also installed the TerraFlex heavy duty hinge. One of my favorite additions is this magnetically held tailgate table. No rattles, one-hand operation with a slide-out cutting board. Inside is where all of my modifications for overlanding really kind of come together. I spent at least a year building this internal platform. Early on, I slept on it, but its primary goal was to allow me to store many things underneath it, including my table and my solar panels, which are currently not here. I've mounted a fridge from Dometic on it. The fridge is powered by a do-it-yourself power box. 2 separate circuits fed from the dual battery kit at the front. So looking closer at this power box, it provides multiple 12-volt outlets. One is dedicated for the fridge. USB, another 12-volt, and switches for various different lights. This one, for example, the light on my tailgate glass. These switches are for clamp-on lights that I can clamp on wherever I need them. To organize my gear, I've bought 2 of these pouches or sport bar bags, one for each side, to keep all my gear at bay. For further safety, I've bought a TMR Customs clamp-on fire extinguisher mount. Perhaps another shot of the attic from Blue Ridge Overland gear for organizing all of my blankets or clothing or whatever things that I don't want to get wet should I find myself stuck in a puddle. At the back from the power box, I mentioned these two clamp-on lights. This is one of them. I can clamp it on anywhere that the cord will reach. All it is, $5 clamp from Home Depot, an LED light, presto. These clamp lights can work outside or inside. Although I have enough lighting inside, I usually use them outside. For easy access under the storage platform, I've made lids on both sides, and on the bottom, heavy-duty Velcro and some more Blue Ridge Overland panels or pockets. I store spare parts, tools, and other miscellaneous stuff in those. And below, I've got various supplies for recovery, spare fluids, a jack, axes, recovery gear, you name it. Alright, well let's take a look at my current camping setup. To open it, 2 latches, one on each side. A lever inside.
That's it?
Ready for bed.
That is amazing.
When I am set up for camping, I can leave all my sleeping bags, pillows, blankets, everything up in the top. The quality of life improvement that this camper has made for camping and overlanding is amazing. Let me show you how I get up. First, I flip up the platform. Use a little strap here to hold it up. I have the footwell for taking off my shoes, which is important because they're usually muddy. Now, all I have to do is push up on this little panel that drops into a hole, and up I go. There's a safety bar that swings down to support it, particularly useful if you've got anything on roof racks at the top. I've got an organizer, reading lights, USB outlets, pretty cozy, isn't it? And to get out, flip this up, drop down. I have easy access to store stuff that I don't need up here. I can store my wallet, keys, and phone in the organizer. One of my most recent additions is these Atlas steps mounted on the hinges for easy access to stuff on the roof. Up here, I mount my Max Tracks. The extra weight on the roof does make this a little heavier to lift, which is also why there's that safety stand inside. So now that we've talked about a lot of the overlanding modifications, let's dive into some of the DIY stuff, why I did them and how I did them. Let's start here with these front mud flaps. Hanging mud flaps would never work in an off-roading situation because they would get caught under tires, pinned, and just ripped off. But I needed to protect my hinges because the front tires, being so knobby, were throwing rocks clear across the side of the Jeep, and I had to repaint all of these because they were so damaged by flying rocks. So I went to good old Princess Auto, bought a 24 by 24 inch mud flap, cut it out, mounted it with 2 bolts to the plastic inner liner, and a zip tie to the rock rail. And now it protects my front hinges, rear hinges, and most of my rear fender from rocks. Let's take a look at some of the electrical stuff I did. The keyword being some. I've actually done quite a bit. To power all of my gear, charging my phones, my tablets, my cameras, I created this little panel that has 12 volt and USB. This is fed from a Blue Sea marine power block or fuse block installed under the dash. We'll take a look at the one in the back as well. So this power box is mounted basically on 2 axes, where the hard top mounts to the tub and on a bolt on the side. It is made out of a project box from Sahara Electronics and a Amazon special set of switches and outlets. I drilled holes into the lid of the project box, mounted each of these, which was pretty straightforward, and using a similar technique to the panel at the front, wired this up with 2 feed circuits, one dedicated for the fridge and one dedicated for the rest. With all of the 12 volt outlets that I have available, I can optionally plug in adapters for USB if I have more USB things to charge. Or I can power, as we discovered on one of my trips, I can power a coffee maker off of this. Gotta have your coffee.
So Fred, do you have any final words that you'd like to say about your build?
Yeah, weight is definitely a thing that overlanders and off-roaders both have to deal with. We have a lot of gear, recovery, camping, all of that stuff, armor, all that adds weight, and we have to manage that. When I first started with this build, I had a 2.5 inch AEV lift. However, it became very clear as I started building, especially into overlanding, that that wasn't enough. I needed to upgrade to the 4.5 inch high capacity AEV lift in order to handle that weight. And this was put perhaps most into focus by adding the J30 top, which added high weight, and I needed to manage that.
Right.
So with all of those things in mind, I've been very happy with the AEV 4.5 inch lift in combination with the TerraFlex Quick Connect, because it has a spring built into it on this side so that it gives me more flex but also more stability. I don't actually need to disable or disconnect my sway bar in order to enjoy a rough trail.
Excellent. Well, you've made some amazing decisions and amazing mods to your Jeep, and I'm sure some of the viewers got a lot of ideas for their Jeeps as well, so thank you very much.
You're welcome, Dino. This has been a 6-year and going project, and looking forward to it. I still plan on adding a 270-degree awning to this to round out the setup, but I'm looking forward to enjoying many more years with it.
Wow, Fred, thank you so much for that. I appreciate so much that you shared all this information with me and the viewers. And I just want the viewers to know, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below and I'll try to get the answers for you. And all of the items that we discussed in the video, I'll have links to them in the comment section below. So now let's move on to this episode's tip segment. Now for some cheaper Jeeper tips. Now when it comes to tips and builds that include significant mods, and I mean significant mods, not like grab bar handles or things like that. The best tip that I could give, and that's from my own personal experience, is to put your mods on one at a time. Don't just plan on some weekend to call a buddy over and slap on a whole bunch of major mods to your Jeep because you're excited and you were collecting all the parts and you just do it all at once. See, the problem with that is if you have, say, a steel bumper and then a winch and then larger wheels and tires, and then say you put on some steering components or sway bar disconnects, when you start driving, if there's a problem, you won't know which is the offending component. Whereas if you just put each item on one at a time and live with it for a while, you'll see what it does to the performance of the Jeep, and at that time you'll know what impact that particular component made to your Jeep. And that's it for this week's tip segment. Now let's hear from our subscribers. And now for subscribers' tips. This week's tip comes from last week's video where I demonstrated plugging in a CB radio after correcting a fuse issue. Hey Cheaper Jeeper TV, we're using two-way radios instead of CBs. Signed, John. John, that's a great thing to point out because although in my club during the Fall Colors run we were using CB radios, depending on the group you're with, you may require a different type of comm system. For example, during the Cape Breton run when I was out with that group, we used two-way radios out there. So it's always good to be aware as to the kind of communications your club's using before you go and invest in a system. And if you have subscriber tips that you'd like to share, please put them in the comments section below as they may make it in an upcoming video. Hey, that's it for this week's episode of Cheaper Jeeper TV. I hope that you found it interesting. If you did, remember to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. So until next week, be well, stay safe, take care.